portion. Okay, we're going.
This guy sucks now.
Funny. All right. I'm going to keep an eye on that, and you keep an eye on this.
I will.
Green. We're looking for green. If it turns to red, we got problems.
Green, we are green.
Okay. All right, so here we are. This is day 4 of the Trouble with Normal is It Always Gets Worse tour. And we are in Marcus Hook, and we are joined by Echo. And I'm going to let Echo introduce herself, and then maybe we can go from there.
Sure. Hi, my name is Echo Alford. I use they, them pronouns. And I am a lifelong member of this community. I grew up in Claymont, Delaware, about 2 miles from where we're sitting right now, in the middle of what was then City Steel, a steel mill. My neighborhood was surrounded on 3 sides by City Steel, and on the 4th side by I-95. And in the background behind the steel mill was, at the time, the Marcus Hook refinery. So that was my landscape growing up. I lived there until I was 12 years old, 1998 or 99, and then moved to Boothwyn, which is 2 miles in a different direction from where we're sitting right now. In the same zip code, really just 5 minutes up the street. So, you know, for most of my life, I have been surrounded by these industrial facilities, and of course the pollution that they produce. And so that includes, like I said, it was the Marcus Hook refinery until 2012 when the refinery was decommissioned. And then it reopened as a petrochemical processing facility in 2015. So all of the natural gases that are being fracked out in the Marcellus Shale is then shipped by the Mariner East Pipeline 2 to where we're at right now, which is the Marcus Hook Industrial Complex, owned by Energy Transfer. And yeah, it's been going strong since 2012 with a significantly smaller number of employees, and a different set of pollution and health consequences from that pollution. We also have Braskem, Monroe Refinery, which produces jet fuel for, I believe, Delta Airlines. We have the Covanta Waste Incinerator, of course, in Chester. The Delcora Sewage Sludge Incinerator, also in Chester. Kimberly-Clark, the paper manufacturing company, and several other Title V permanent facilities. And it's so interesting because our municipalities here are 1 to 2 square miles. So when we're talking about, you know, Marcus Hook, Trainer, Linwood, Chester, Boothwyn, these are all neighborhoods more so than towns. So when we have a facility that's in Chester or in Trainer, they might be right next to each other even though they're in different towns. So there's a lot of oversight that happens there. Energy Transfer, when they send out mailers informing the community of things, will send it to the entire Marcus Hook borough. And that's 2 neighborhoods. But along the fence line of the Marcus Hook Industrial Complex sits 3 and 4 more towns that are not getting the same mailers, even though, again, they are directly next to the fence line as well. And that doesn't just happen with mailers. Of course, that happens with a lot more information as well.
Yeah, one thing that you said, and I guess I hadn't even thought about PK being part of this equation, but we're actually sort of neighbors. I live in the shale on the western part of Pennsylvania.
We are the pipeline.
Yep. And then
I'm the
PK
midstream.
Yep.
Yep.
And I'm at the end.
Yeah, I have a question real quick. Could
Sure.
you tell everybody what Braskem is?
They are a chemicals manufacturer. I can't remember exactly what they do other than chemicals manufacturing.
You have a lot of specialty chemical plants. I was
Right.
looking at it and I'm like, whoa. Like
I
a
know there
lot.
are several more too. There's also S-Chem,
Yeah.
which I don't know what they produce. And there's a few like steel mills, wood mills, and other chemicals and polymer manufacturers in the community.
Yeah, and basically I think Braskem was one of the ones that's doing a polyethylene cracker.
Yes, that's correct.
I like
Thank
purple
you.
ones.
Yeah.
I apologize. But yeah, so yeah, this is loaded.
It's loaded.
And
It's
this is our background, Marcus Hook. So
yes. Oh, we are actually at the Market Square Memorial Park, I believe it's called, which is owned by Energy Transfer, of course. So the small.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Or it may be owned by the town, but as a gift from
that makes sense.
Energy
too.
Transfer, something along those lines.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we're surrounded on also. We have the river right there, which obviously has heavy, industrial facilities directly on the water. There's a bit of tank farm over there, and then there's a lot more tank farm and, ethylene freezers, and all of the different facilities are, just in front of us here.
So one of the reasons that I'm doing this interview thing, I mean, we had a wonderful interview earlier today with Kearney Warren, and we also had I've had other interviews along the way, but these are interviews with folks that I have met in my travels through the last 12 years, basically, and in some ways, all different ways, but in some ways, each one of you has touched me with your fights and the things you're involved in. And so last year, you and I met.
Yes.
Actually, I think it was here.
It was here, yeah.
Right over there in that pavilion. It's to our, well, to this side over here. I was with the Walk for Our Grandchildren, and you were here representing folks in Marcus Hook. I have to tell you that after we left here, the grandparents and the others who were with us, the story in Chester and Marcus Hook was the subject of conversation for days afterwards. This is a fight, a real fight.
It is, and unfortunately, it's a fight that's starting way too late. I wish, that I had really truly been aware of the issues here years ago. I would have loved to be able to organize, especially before the Marcus Hook Industrial Complex reopened as the petrochemical facility and with the pipeline and all that. So, unfortunately, instead of stopping a facility from being opened, we're now fighting for the smallest concessions of better health and safety practices. You know what I mean? Lower emissions, less emissions, no emissions, better controls, better pollution controls. Some of the things that aren't even being controlled at all, like the lack of mercury control at all at the Covanto waste incinerator.
Yeah, and again, this sounds very familiar because in the shale fields in the West, we had no idea what was coming. We knew that there were going to be gas wells, but that's something that we've been doing for over 100 years.
Right.
But what we got was something way different. So
Truly.
it's almost like you're always fighting a rear guard action. I hear you.
Yeah, so one of the things that prompted me to start, looking at this situation and organizing around it was something that still strikes me so much every time I hear from another community member that their child has nosebleeds. Constant, chronic nosebleeds. This is something that my son will be 15 next month, just actually in about 2 weeks.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah, thank you. And he's had completely random, very frequent nosebleeds for his entire life. And that's, like I said, he has lived here, in Boothwyn, about 2 miles from this facility, his whole life. Now, directly behind our home is the CSX train tracks, which, of course, CSX also transports many of the chemicals and materials that are being used at these various facilities. And those train tracks are about 100 yards from my bedroom window. Another interesting tidbit about that is that noise ordinances do not exist for industrial facilities. And that's another thing that, you know, in the grand scope of things may sound trivial, but is truly not. It is extremely psychologically impactful, especially, yeah, I mean, every single day having loud, sometimes very sudden, sometimes very scary noises.
Yeah.
All the time. It never stops.
We were just, I mean, me in particular, I live in a rural area, and we were just sitting over in that pavilion there, and I said, man, it is really noisy here. And it's not natural noises. They're
Yeah, like,
and yeah, and PK was
hearing
listening to the
event release,
whatever it
over
is
there.
that's coming from over there.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a nice sound.
I can't sit outside and have a conversation on the phone for more than 10 minutes until a train goes by.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can't hear. But the double standard is really wild in that I can't sit outside of my home and listen to loud music past 10 p.m. But it's perfectly fine for, you know, industrial trains to be, you know, not only running, but blowing horns and sometimes stopping, but idling for hours at 2, 3, and 4 o'clock in the morning, 100 yards from my bedroom window.
Yeah, and the other thing about trains, of course, too, is that the diesel is not something you want to be breathing either.
No, and like I said, they do idle for a very long time and sit there to the point. There are signs at all the intersections in town saying prolonged, you know, train stoppage, call 911, and that happens very frequently.
Yeah, they're blocking off access to
Absolutely,
emergency
yeah.
services or anything.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So there's lots going on in this kind of fight.
Yes.
Are there other things that people should be aware of happening in this area that they may not know about? Well, I mean, number one, you didn't talk a whole lot about what's going on actually right here.
Train.
There's the train now. But you didn't talk about what's going on right here and the potential for an accident and that kind of stuff. Again, that people had no consent. Could you talk about that?
Not only potential for an accident, but potential for disaster.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about some very volatile, scary things here that a small accident can trigger a giant catastrophe that would devastate thousands of families that live near here. If not instantly and outright killing them, then certainly causing some very serious health consequences in the immediate and the future. And that's, I think, something, you know, and our families that have family members that work here too, you know, that's something that's scary. That's something that they have to contend with every day, is knowing that, you know, their loved one is coming to work in a facility that has the potential to, you know, cause a disaster and kill them and everyone around at any time.
Yeah. And
Fortunately, that, you know, does not happen often. There was the last and really only death that I know of that occurred at the Marcus Hook Industrial Complex facility was a worker was killed in 2015 during construction of a part of the facility.
Yeah.
I believe it was I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that it was a non-union subcontractor that was contracted out from a business that had several serious violations against them for worker safety. So this is something that, you know, with due diligence, we can avoid situations like that. When we're hiring non-union workers from companies that have dangerous and, you know, violent towards their worker backgrounds, we're not protecting our community. We're not protecting our workers. And, you know, the workers here are not at fault. They're here trying to make a decent living, and we do not blame them or begrudge them that in any way. I just wish that the facilities took better care of them, and not just them, the community that they live in. You know, many years ago, like I said, there was a lot higher numbers of workers here when it was a refinery. Of course, that took a lot more workers to complete that job. It also took a lot more space. And most of those workers lived in the community, so they had benefits good insurance plans from the company. And unfortunately, as the number of workers decreased with the new facility, the jobs actually became much higher skilled jobs as well. Engineering jobs and things like that, where our blue collar workers here aren't necessarily trained for. So a lot more of the workers are now coming from communities outside the immediate area, and much less of our town is protected from the insurance from the facility.
Right, and Kearney talked a little bit about that too today with and she referred to it as extractive. And,
Absolutely.
It's true.
It's not only health extraction that we're experiencing here, it is absolutely wealth and resource extraction that we're experiencing with community members.
Switching gears
Sure.
somewhat, and not somewhat, a lot. One of the things that I struggle with, and I know a lot of people my age struggle with, are pronouns. You talked about you go by they, them.
Yes.
Could you talk about that?
Sure. So I am gender non-conforming. That means that I don't identify necessarily with womanhood or manhood. Sometimes one or the other, sometimes neither, sometimes all of the above. It's really not something that I feel strongly tied to either way. So I use they, them pronouns, which are gender neutral. It just makes me feel comfortable and more like myself when people refer to me with they, them pronouns.
Well, the reason I thought of you having this conversation was we were involved in something else, somewhere else, in another
Yeah.
place, and a reporter did a story
Yes.
about you and misgendered you.
Yes.
And you had an amazing reaction. So did he, as I remember.
It was silly, let's say. So the thing we were doing somewhere else was Occupy Biden, which was an incredible experience. We camped outside of Joe Biden's home in Wilmington for a week between Christmas and New Year's, and we marched on Joe Biden's home on New Year's Day, delivering a letter asking him to declare a climate emergency and stop any new fossil fuel projects. Literally the bare minimum of what we need to do to prevent climate catastrophe that is already well underway. And that was an amazing experience. I am always so thrilled and uplifted to spend time and action with you and other earth, water, land protectors that we've developed a beautiful network of friends that are in this struggle together and fighting for a better world, for our grandchildren, for our children, for ourselves, for our community, and for our earth. That's so important. I was reached out to personally on Twitter by a Fox News reporter. I was skeptical, but news coverage is important. And whether or not we were going to get a favorable report from Fox News didn't matter, because once other outlets saw that we had a report from Fox News, they would also start reporting on it. So that's kind of what we're working with the press there, that situation. So even though I knew to be weary of who I was speaking with, I was absolutely going to talk to them anyway, to him anyway. So he reached out, I answered his questions, which were basically like, why did I attend this action? Who am I, etc., etc. And later on, when the article came out, I had noticed that the reporter used she, her pronouns for me instead of they, them. My fault for not, I wasn't in the habit of this yet. And it was something that even now, it's not something that necessarily bothers me often, if at all. I kind of just let it roll. It's not in the grand scope of things. I'm glad the story's getting out there, and it's not necessarily worth getting worked up about. That's me personally.
Right.
Many other gender nonconforming or trans individuals it's a very different story. They may feel very strongly about it, and they have every right to feel so strongly. It's so important that we respect people. And that's all it comes down to, is respecting people and who they are. They know who they are better than we possibly can.
That's true.
Exactly. So I was in a mood. I had time that day, and I messaged back the Fox News reporter, and I said, "Hi, you used incorrect pronouns for me. I was hoping that you could change it. I use they, them pronouns. Very simple, casual, no big deal. Let's just switch it up. Anywhere you see or her, she or her, swipe it out for they or them. Very simple and easy." No. That is not what happened at all.
Oh, man.
This reporter changed the entire structure of the paragraph to avoid using pronouns at all. Because
That's
yeah,
weird.
it was very strange. And
of
that's
effort.
something that journalists are held accountable for now, is incorrect pronoun use. So instead of using my correct pronouns, he bent over backwards at least 7 different ways
That's not
to
avoidance.
avoid using pronouns at all.
Wow, the effort.
And it not only, changed the structure of the entire paragraph, it also falsely attributed my reasons for being there, my information, my story with the entire organization that I'm a part of. Because instead of just using they and them pronouns, they, for some reason, said that the reason that I attended was the reason that my organization attended. Such and such organization was there because. Instead of just saying Echo was there because, or they were there because. They could have even just used my name.
Did you feel like they took some of the story away from you?
Absolutely. It falsely attributed it to a nationwide organization that I was certainly there as a part of that organization. But I am not an entire working class nationwide organization. So it was strange and it was frustrating. And I laid into him a bit after that. I was like, it's like, really, you messed it. Like, it didn't even sound good. He made himself sound bad, truly. Like, yeah. I was just like, why all this? Just avoid using the pronouns. Like, are you that bigoted, truly? That
That's
you
how
can't
much
even
effort you put
use
in.
so much effort, much effort.
I do want to say that that interaction really helped me because again, this is something pretty new to me,
Right.
and it is something that I struggle with, and having you talk about it in those terms, I mean, it clarified in my mind.
I'm glad. I'm really glad. And I am one of those people, like I said, my comfort level is very different than a lot of other trans and gender non-conforming people's in this kind of situation. So I'm the kind of person that I want you to make your mistakes with me because I'm okay with it. And I can be there for you and help you through it. And we can work together to come to that solidarity. I encourage questions, no matter if they may or may not be offensive, because as long as I know that these questions are coming from a place of solidarity and learning, then I just don't want people to feel afraid to offend. I want people to feel safe to come to me so that I can help more people kind of understand the newer, definitely not new, newer gender dynamics and how they are being used much more, universally.
Yep.
And again, this is one of the things that I really appreciate about you. Not just this, but you put yourself out there and you make yourself vulnerable to further our causes. Yeah, so
Absolutely,
that's something
yeah.
I really appreciate about you.
Thank you.
BK, you got anything?
I mean, I love talking about the gender conformity, because I've always, for me, I'd say I'm gender non-conforming as well. I do use she, her, and it's mainly because I'm just like, it just comes out.
Right.
It just comes out. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a feminine mood and I'm in and there's other days where I'm a masculine, and people do say, hey, sir, to me a lot. And everybody else behind me is more upset than I am, and I'm like,
Right,
oh, no,
right.
that's pretty much where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And so I call myself fluid. Mainly, it's like a gender fluidity for me. It's just something I adopted. Like pronouns came out after I came out. Like so, like this
Yeah.
really, and I love it. Like, how could you not love the fact that this is identified and now taken seriously?
Yes.
And the awareness and having friends like you that are absolutely spreading that awareness, and you do it really well. Like,
Thank you.
You know, you really you have a grounding that's very strong and stern, and you're not afraid.
No.
And that's where we have. I mean, you know, before all the people before us that have been harmed or hurt because of being this way, and
Yeah.
continuing to. In a sense of taking that, you're honoring all that. Like, some people who are not here with us anymore can look back, like could look at us from down and they'd be like, oh my gosh, like how much work people put in, and it's still a work in progress. And so that's why, like, it's awesome that you actually do take that time and effort to help others understand, even though it's Fox and even though you took that much effort, there was a learning part in that. Do you believe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
And yeah, I really hope we are making our ancestors proud. They're, we come from a long line of proud queer fighters.
Yeah.
They fought for this. And I am so honored to be able to carry that legacy and even potentially further it.
Yes.
And same, I'm gender fluid as well. And even though, they, them pronouns are comfortable for me, pronouns do not equal gender either.
Very true.
It is extremely valid to be gender non-conforming and use,
Obviously, whatever
and
comes
use
out.
any pronouns. It really does not matter. Pronouns and gender are not the same thing.
It's like the presence in the moment where I am. It's like it teaches you how to be present and where you're
It
at.
does.
I
It
think.
does.
It's
And it's
interesting.
really, 10 years ago I didn't know this pronoun stuff either, and I'm not perfect. I misgender myself even sometimes. I certainly misgender my loved ones, unfortunately, at times. We're all growing and learning this together. And it's important to be with each other and hold each other through that.
Absolutely. I do have other questions. So, is there anything else that you would like to say that you think that would be awesome for the world or for people to understand about Marcus Hook, or even about you? Is there anything that we haven't touched on here? There's so many issues here. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, we have the river, but there's dredging of the river because of all these floats. There's so many different factors that are impacting the environment.
Truly.
Here. So, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else that we've missed or that we haven't asked about.
Obviously, there's
What?
things we've forgotten.
I've got more. It's okay.
I mean,
So
It's
I
been a
think
day.
what's the most important to understand is that this is not the crisis. The environmental injustice, racism, is not the cause of the crisis. It's not the crisis itself. It is extremely and constantly and inextricably entwined with our medical system failing. It's entwined with our housing issues. It is entwined with our poverty issues. All of these things are a symptom of one sickness, and that sickness is capitalism.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Capitalism.
Right?
Of course I was going to say it. Capitalism is the crisis. We cannot and will not stop the climate crisis, the impending climate catastrophe, unless we stop capitalism. We will not stop the healthcare crisis unless we stop capitalism. We will not stop the housing crisis and our homelessness crisis unless we stop capitalism. We will
Incarceration.
not stop the disgusting war on drugs
Oh.
and incarceration until we stop capitalism. It all comes back to putting profits over people, which is what capitalism does. As long as this profit motive exists and is allowed to continue, the working class of the world will continue to suffer. And it's also important to note that this is not a local issue. This is an international issue. Even the environmental issues here are an international issue, because the natural gases that are being processed here at the Marcus Hook Industrial Complex, they don't power homes, public works, or cars, or anything in our community. They make single-use plastics that are shipped overseas. So where we, like I said, and that's a huge misunderstanding in the community too. People think that we are having some sort of energy independence because of this, and it couldn't be farther from the truth.
Propaganda.
We are only furthering pollution in the rest of the world too. And even, you know, down to the vehicles that transport these things and the workers and everything, you know, again, it's not just polluting here, it's also, you know, resources being extracted from the global south to make the machinery that operates here. So this is an international injustice. It is not a local injustice.
The system.
It's systemic. It is truly systemic. That system is capitalism, and we have to stop it. The working class needs to be in control. We have the knowledge, the skills, and the resources, and the people power to stop and even reverse the climate catastrophe and all forms of oppression in the entire world. There is no more scarcity that's not manufactured. Every bit of scarcity in this world now is manufactured. We could implement solar, hydro, and wind energy across the world with the resources and skills that we now possess.
It's true.
Every day that we don't do that is a choice. It is a choice to continue to kill our fellow humans
And other beings.
and our
Yeah,
earth,
yeah,
all life.
exactly.
every other species, our wildlife, entire ecosystems.
Biodiversity is like declining, like that. Do you imagine a world that's not diverse? I mean, and we're watching that in so many ways.
It's terrifying.
It is.
But
No idea.
I have full confidence that we are going to win. I have full confidence that we are going to make a revolution in my lifetime, that we are going to end this oppression and exploitation of each other and our earth. I believe that we're going to win and create a better world.
We need to stay positive, like we do.
Absolutely.
And how we cannot.
That's
get
that
rid of-
revolutionary optimism.
Absolutely.
And we need it.
I love it.
Thank
That
you.
I think is the perfect place to end this.
Yeah.
I know you have to run. And-
I forgot.
That's okay.
But also, it takes a long time to upload. So
Yeah.
this is super, and I will get this up as soon as I can process it.
Thank you so much for
Oh.
meeting me today.
Thank you.
Where we met in May of 2021, and instantly became friends and comrades. And I'm always so honored and happy to share space and community and struggle with you.
Yeah, me too.
I do
Same
want to
thing.
thank you. I do want to thank you for actually how we met, right?
Yeah.
Her organization was out, and they came out to Chester County,
Yes.
and supported us. And it was hard. It was very hard to get people involved.
Yeah.
You guys absolutely even made your own like rallies. That touched my heart. Is that Marsh Creek, or that's my home?
I
So the
know.
fact that you came to my home and you guys stood up and spoke truth there. Yeah.
It's
that will always
solidarity,
stay in my
and
head.
we
That's
need
the
it,
coolest way
yeah.
to meet somebody.
Yeah, we met
It's
at
solidarity.
a press conference,
Yep.
a people's press conference,
That's right.
about the 48 criminal charges against Energy Transfer for crimes committed during Mariner East 2 construction. And again, instant friends and comrades. We are in this struggle together.
Yeah.
We are on this earth together, and so we fight together, and we will win together.
Got to do it as a team.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Echo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Echo. By the way, it is a pretty badass team.
Yeah. Oh, that was so fun.